My name's Brian, and until a few weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect wife, Jennifer. Smart, beautiful, funny. She seemed like everything I'd ever wanted. Jennifer and I met about 8 years ago at a work event. She was charming and confident, and I was immediately drawn to her. She had an identical twin sister, Jessica, but Jessica lived in another state and was rarely around. From what I understood, they had one of those sibling relationships that was close, but a little competitive. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Our life seemed idyllic. We lived in a beautiful house I inherited from my late father, who left me a significant family fortune that I'd spent years managing. Jennifer didn't come from much money, but I didn't care. Love, I thought, was all that mattered. She'd always assured me she loved me for who I was, not what I had. But recently, things had started feeling off. It began with little things. Jennifer would come home late, claiming she was visiting Jessica or working late. She was on her phone constantly, texting someone she insisted was just a friend. The kicker was her behavior: mood swings, snippy comments, and a sudden increase in her shopping sprees. When I confronted her about how distant she'd been, she brushed me off. "Brian, don't be so paranoid," she said with an exaggerated sigh. "It's just stress. You don't need to make everything about you." I let it slide at first. Maybe she was stressed. But the doubts crept in when she started visiting Jessica even more frequently. It didn't add up. Jessica supposedly lived hours away, but Jennifer never seemed to be gone long enough for those trips to make sense. Then came the incident that truly planted the seed of suspicion. One evening, Jennifer came home wearing a dress I'd never seen before. It wasn't her style at all. More revealing, with a plunging neckline that screamed, "Look at me." "You look nice," I said, trying to keep things light. "Oh, this," she said with a shrug. "It's Jessica's." She thought I'd like it, so she lent it to me. I didn't buy it. Jennifer had never borrowed clothes from her sister before. Why now? I started keeping a closer eye on her, but I had no idea what I was about to uncover. What started as suspicion would turn into a nightmare I couldn't have imagined in my worst dreams. Things started to unravel one weekend when Jennifer claimed she was visiting Jessica again. This time, I decided to do something I'd never done before: check her location on the phone plan we shared. Jennifer wasn't tech-savvy, so I knew she wouldn't have disabled the feature. When I opened the app, my stomach sank. She wasn't hours away in Jessica City. She was barely 15 minutes from our house, in a part of town she had no business being in. A hotel district. I tried to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe she'd gotten tired and stopped to rest. Maybe she and Jessica had decided to meet halfway. I wanted to believe her, but something told me to dig deeper. When she came home later that evening, I played it cool. She was smiling, acting unusually sweet, even suggesting we order takeout and watch a movie together. It felt forced, like she was trying to overcompensate. "Did you have a good time with Jessica?" I asked casually. "Yeah, it was nice," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "And where did you guys meet?" "Oh, just the usual place," she said, waving a hand dismissively. Her answer didn't line up with what I'd seen on the app, but I didn't push her, not yet. The next morning, I decided to check her car. I don't know what I was expecting to find. Maybe a receipt, maybe nothing, but what I found blew everything wide open. Under the passenger seat was a hotel key card. Not a receipt, not a piece of paper, a full-on key card to one of the hotels in the area where her location had pinged. When she came downstairs, I held it up. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice cold. She froze for half a second, her eyes darting to the card, and then back to me. But Jennifer was quick on her feet, and she immediately recovered with an eye roll so exaggerated it could have won her an Oscar. "That's Jessica's," she said. "She stayed at a hotel here recently, and I guess it must have fallen out of her bag when we swapped clothes in the car." "Why would Jessica stay in a hotel so close to us?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "She's been seeing someone," Jennifer said quickly. "Some guy she met online. She didn't want me to tell anyone because she's embarrassed." Her excuse was so specific, so detailed, that for a moment I almost believed her. Almost. But the more I thought about it, the more her story didn't add up. If Jessica had been seeing someone, why hadn't Jennifer mentioned it earlier? And why hadn't she said anything about the hotel when I asked where they'd been the night before? Something didn't feel right, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more going on than she was letting on. Later that night, while Jennifer was in the shower, I grabbed her phone. She always had it locked, but I'd seen her enter the passcode enough times to know it. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't have to dig far. The first thing I saw was a series of texts to someone named Mark. Mark, last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Jennifer, me too. Can't wait for next time. My stomach churned, but as I scrolled further, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Texts about swapping places with Jessica. Jennifer, it's your turn next time. He's getting suspicious. Jessica, no problem. He'll never figure it out. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Swapping places? What the hell was going on? I couldn't confront her yet. I needed more proof, needed to understand exactly what they were doing. But one thing was clear. Jennifer wasn't just cheating on me. She and Jessica were hiding something much bigger. After finding those texts, I couldn't sit still. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. The idea that Jennifer and Jessica were swapping places to cover for her affair was bad enough. But what did they mean by, your turn next time? And why would Jennifer involve her sister in something so personal and sinister? I knew I needed more proof, something solid that would not only confirm my suspicions but also explain why they were doing this. The next day, Jennifer left the house claiming she had a doctor's appointment. I smiled and nodded, pretending everything was normal. As soon as she left, I opened the location app again. Sure enough, she wasn't heading toward any clinic. She was driving toward the same hotel district as before. This time, I decided to follow her. I parked a safe distance away, watching as she pulled into the lot of a mid-tier hotel. She stepped out of the car wearing an outfit I hadn't seen before, tight jeans, high heels, and a blouse that showed way more than she usually did. She looked different, not just dressed up, but almost like she was imitating someone. She went inside, and I waited, unsure of what to do next. My gut told me this was bigger than a single affair, so I decided to get creative. I walked into the lobby and asked the receptionist if I could leave something for my wife in her room. I made up a story about forgetting our anniversary and wanted to surprise her. To my shock, the receptionist didn't hesitate. Room 214, she said. That's when I saw her, Jessica. Jessica was sitting at the hotel bar, laughing with some guy I didn't recognize. At first, I thought I was seeing things, but as I looked closer, I realized she was dressed almost exactly like Jennifer had been the night before, right down to the same jewelry. And that's when it hit me. They weren't just covering for each other. They were impersonating each other. I left the hotel before anyone could notice me and drove home, my mind spinning. The texts, the location data, the identical outfits, it all pointed to one thing. Jennifer and Jessica were working together, living double lives, and using their identical looks to keep their secrets hidden. But why? Why go to such extreme lengths? That night, while Jennifer was asleep, I went back into her phone. This time, I scrolled through her emails, and what I found made my blood run cold. Email from Jessica to Jennifer. Don't forget, if we can keep him distracted for a few more months, we'll have access to the trust. He's too dumb to figure it out. Just make sure he doesn't talk to a lawyer. Email from Jennifer to Jessica. Relax. He's clueless. Once we get the money, we'll be set. We just need to keep up the act a little longer. My heart pounded as I pieced it together. The family fortune my father left behind. Jennifer and Jessica were trying to con me out of it. They'd been swapping places to keep me off balance, using their identical looks to cover for each other's absences. And they were laughing about it. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a calculated betrayal. They didn't love me. I was nothing more than a mark, a means to an end. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I started documenting everything, the texts, the emails, the location data. I even installed hidden cameras in the house to catch Jennifer in the act the next time she tried to pull one of her visits. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to destroy her. I didn't sleep that night. The emails between Jennifer and Jessica kept replaying in my head. The audacity, the cruelty. They were using me as a pawn, a stepping stone to get their hands on my family fortune. Worse, they were mocking me for being clueless. But if they thought I was clueless, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The next morning, Jennifer acted like everything was normal. She made coffee, scrolled through her phone, and hummed a tune like she didn't have a care in the world. It made my stomach turn. "I was thinking we should do something special this weekend," she said, flashing me a bright smile. "Maybe a little getaway?" "Sounds great," I said, forcing myself to smile back. "You've been working so hard. You deserve it." She grinned, clearly pleased. I played along, pretending to be the same gullible husband she'd been taking advantage of for months. But inside, I was simmering with rage. That evening, Jennifer left for another one of her visits. This time, I watched the live feed from the hidden cameras I'd installed in the living room and bedroom. Sure enough, about an hour after she left, Jessica walked through the door. She was wearing one of Jennifer's outfits, her hair styled exactly the way Jennifer wore it. She didn't hesitate, moving through the house like she owned it, pouring herself a glass of wine, and settling on the couch with her phone. I clenched my fists, barely able to contain my anger. The audacity was unbelievable. When Jennifer came home later that night, I decided it was time to start poking holes in their carefully crafted story. "How was Jessica?" I asked casually as she walked through the door. She froze for a fraction of a second before recovering. "Good. We had a nice dinner and caught up." "Where'd you eat?" She hesitated again, then rattled off the name of a restaurant I knew was closed for renovations. "Really?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "I thought that place was shut down." "Oh well, I'm at the place next door," she said quickly, avoiding my eyes. I didn't press further, but I could tell she was rattled. For the first time, she wasn't as confident as she usually was. The next day, I decided to confront Jessica instead of Jennifer. I wanted to see how she'd react if I caught her off guard. I showed up at her apartment unannounced, knocking loudly on the door until she finally answered. She looked surprised to see me, but quickly composed herself. "Brian, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice overly cheerful. "I just thought we should talk," I said, stepping inside before she could stop me. She stiffened but didn't argue. "About what?" "I know what you and Jennifer are doing," I said, keeping my voice calm. Her face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Jessica," I said, my tone sharp. "I've seen the texts, the emails. I know about the swapping, the trust fund, all of it." For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she laughed, but it was hollow and nervous. "Brian, you're being ridiculous," she said. "Jennifer and I would never." "Don't," I interrupted. "I'm done playing your games. You two thought you could pull this off without me noticing, but you underestimated me. Now, you're going to tell me everything, or I'll take what I already have straight to the police." Jessica folded faster than I expected. She admitted to swapping places with Jennifer, but tried to downplay it, claiming it was just a joke at first and that Jennifer only wanted a little fun. "And the trust fund?" I pressed. "That was Jennifer's idea," she said quickly. "She said you wouldn't even notice if we distracted you for a while." Her words sent a fresh wave of rage through me, but I kept my composure. When I left Jessica's apartment, I knew I had enough to confront Jennifer directly. But I wasn't going to do it quietly. I wanted to expose her lies in a way she'd never recover from. Armed with Jessica's partial confession and the mountain of evidence I'd gathered, I decided it was time to end their little charade. But I wasn't going to do it in private. No, Jennifer and Jessica had humiliated me, lied to me, and plotted against me. It was only fitting that I return the favor. I texted Jessica and told her I wanted to work things out and that we should meet at the house to talk things through with Jennifer. I framed it as though I was considering forgiving them, dangling the bait I knew they couldn't resist, a chance to get back on track with their scheme. Both of them agreed, likely thinking they could manipulate me into submission. That evening, I sat in the living room, calm and composed as Jennifer walked through the door, with Jessica trailing behind her a few minutes later. Seeing them together was jarring. Identical faces, identical smiles, but identical lies as well. "Brian," Jennifer began, her voice dripping with faux sincerity. "Jessica told me you're upset. Let's talk about this like adults." "Absolutely," I said, gesturing for them to sit. "Let's put everything on the table." For the first few minutes, they tried to control the conversation, spinning excuses and stories to paint themselves as innocent. Jennifer claimed the swapping was a harmless prank. Jessica parroted her sister, insisting it wasn't as serious as I was making it out to be. "You've blown this way out of proportion," Jennifer said, her tone laced with condescension. "We're family, Brian. We're supposed to trust each other." "Oh, I trust you," I said, leaning forward. "That's why I installed cameras in the house." Their faces fell instantly, their synchronized expressions of shock and panic almost comical. "Cameras?" Jennifer said, her voice cracking. "That's right," I said, pulling out my phone. "And I got all the footage, you know, of Jessica walking into our house wearing your clothes while you're visiting her. Or how about the part where you've been texting each other about my trust fund, laughing about how I'd never figure it out?" Jessica looked like she might faint. Jennifer, however, went straight to anger. "You had no right to spy on us," she shouted, standing up. "I had every right," I shot back. "You brought this into my house, Jennifer. You lied to my face, you conspired against me, and you thought I'd just roll over and let you walk away with my father's money." The room erupted into chaos. Jennifer tried to deny everything, shouting over me with increasingly desperate excuses. Jessica, on the other hand, broke down completely, tears streaming down her face as she stammered apologies. "I didn't want to do this, Brian," Jessica sobbed. "It was Jennifer's idea. She said we'd both benefit, that you'd never find out." "Shut up, Jessica," Jennifer snapped, her mask slipping completely. "You're just as involved as I am. Don't try to act innocent now." "And there it is," I said coldly. "You're both guilty, and I have the evidence to prove it." Jennifer's demeanor shifted in an instant. Her anger turned to fear as she realized how serious I was. "Brian," she said, her voice trembling, "we can fix this. We don't have to let things fall apart. I made a mistake, okay? But I love you. We can move past this." I laughed bitterly. "Love me? Is that what you call this? You don't love me, Jennifer. You love my money. You love the lifestyle my family gave you. But you don't love me." "Please," she begged, reaching for my hand. "Don't do this." I pulled my hand away. "It's already done." I stood up and opened the door. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out of this house," I said. "Both of you. And if you even think about trying to contact me again, I'll make sure the police see every bit of evidence I've collected. Do you understand me?" Jennifer's face contorted with rage. "You're going to regret this, Brian," she spat. "No," I said calmly. "The only thing I regret is not seeing through you sooner." Jessica didn't say a word. She simply grabbed her sister's arm and pulled her toward the stairs. As they packed, I sat on the couch, numb but resolute. This was only the beginning of their downfall. They thought they could con me, manipulate me, and walk away unscathed. But they were about to learn just how far I was willing to go to protect what was mine. As soon as Jennifer and Jessica left the house, I locked the door behind them and stood in silence for a moment. I thought I'd feel relief or closure, but all I felt was rage, boiling, unrelenting rage. Kicking them out was only step one. They had tried to rob me, humiliate me, and manipulate me. Now it was my turn to destroy them. I started with the trust fund. Jennifer's emails had made it clear that their plan hinged on accessing the family money. They didn't realize how tightly I'd secured it after inheriting it. My father's will had built-in protections, and with the help of my lawyer, I updated the terms to explicitly block Jennifer, or anyone connected to her, from receiving a single cent. I also filed paperwork to freeze all joint accounts. Jennifer had been spending lavishly for months, and I wasn't about to let her burn through any more of my resources. Within hours, she'd have no access to our shared credit cards or bank accounts. Next, I sent everything to my lawyer, the texts, the emails, the footage. I told him I wanted the divorce filed immediately. "Make it brutal," I said. "She gets nothing." "With what you've given me," he replied, "she doesn't stand a chance. But you need to be prepared. She'll fight dirty." "I'm counting on it," I said. Jennifer and Jessica didn't stay quiet for long. The very next day, I got a call from Jennifer. "What the hell is wrong with you, Brian?" she shouted. "I tried to use my card today, and it was declined." "That's because it's my card," I said coldly. "And you won't be using it anymore." "You can't do this," she screamed. "We're still married." "Not for long," I replied. "I've already filed. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." The line went silent for a moment, and then she changed tactics. "Brian," she said, her voice soft and trembling. "I'm sorry. Okay. I made a mistake. But you're going too far. Please, let's talk about this." "Too far," I said, laughing bitterly. "You and Jessica tried to con me out of my family fortune. You used me, lied to me, and dragged me through the mud. This is the least you deserve." Her response was predictable. Threats. "If you think you can humiliate me and get away with it, you're wrong," she spat. "I'll ruin you." "You already tried that," I said calmly. "It didn't work. Goodbye, Jennifer." I hung up and blocked her number. Step 3 of my plan was going public. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. Jennifer thrived on appearances. Her perfect marriage, her perfect life. It was all an act, and I was about to tear it down. I wrote a post for Facebook, attaching screenshots of the emails and texts between Jennifer and Jessica. I didn't include the footage, at least, not yet, but the evidence was damning enough. Post. To everyone who knows Jennifer and Jessica, last name, here's the truth about the kind of people they are. For months, my wife and her twin sister have been swapping places to hide her affair and con me out of my family's money. They laughed about it, called me clueless, and thought they'd get away with it. Well, they didn't. Consider this a warning. These women will lie, manipulate, and destroy anyone to get what they want. Don't let them fool you like they fooled me. The post went viral in our small community within hours. Comments poured in from friends, neighbors, and acquaintances who were shocked, disgusted, and eager to distance themselves from the twins. Comment 1. "I can't believe Jennifer would do something like this. What a monster." Comment 2. "This is disgusting. You deserve so much better, Brian." Comment 3. "I always thought there was something off about them. Now I know." Jennifer's image was shattered, and Jessica wasn't spared either. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Jessica had been fired from her job after her boss saw the post. "You ruined my life." Jessica texted me later that day. "No, iraplia. You ruined your own life. I just told the truth." The public backlash against Jennifer and Jessica was immediate and relentless. The Facebook post had done its job, exposing them for the liars and manipulators they were. But I wasn't finished. They had taken months of my life, my trust, and my peace of mind. I wanted to ensure they had no path to redemption. A few days after the post went viral, I received a call from one of Jennifer's closest friends, Claire. "Brian," she said, her voice cautious. "Is all of this true? About Jennifer and Jessica?" "Every word," I replied. I can't believe it," she said, sounding genuinely distraught. "She always talked about how much she loved you. To think she'd do something like this, and with Jessica, of all people. She doesn't love anyone but herself," I said. "And Jessica? She's just as bad. They were willing to ruin me to get what they wanted." Claire sighed. "Well, she's going to have a hard time showing her face around here. Everyone's talking about it." "Good," I said. "They deserve every bit of it." Claire wasn't exaggerating. Jennifer and Jessica had become pariahs overnight. Mutual friends stopped returning their calls. Neighbors whispered behind their backs. Even their own parents, who had always coddled them, were reportedly furious. I heard through the grapevine that Jennifer had tried to attend a local charity event she'd been involved in for years. She was turned away at the door, the organizers citing her recent behavior as the reason. Meanwhile, Jessica's life was falling apart just as quickly. After losing her job, she'd been forced to move out of her apartment and back in with their parents. Jennifer, who had been crashing with a friend, wasn't far behind. The thought of the two of them, living under the same roof, stewing in their shared humiliation, brought a twisted sense of satisfaction. They conspired against me together, and now they were sinking together. But I wanted to make sure they couldn't recover financially either. Jennifer had always been reckless with money, spending more than she earned and leaning on me to cover the difference. Without access to our joint accounts, she was left with nothing but her own dwindling savings. Jessica, who had always been more financially stable, wasn't much better off after losing her job. I contacted their landlord anonymously and informed him about Jessica's involvement in the scam, emphasizing the public backlash she was facing. A week later, she was evicted for violating the morality clause in her lease. Jennifer tried to fight back. She sent me an email, dripping with venom and desperation. Jennifer, Brian, you've made your point, but this has gone too far. You've destroyed my reputation, my friendships, my entire life. What more do you want from me? I didn't reply. She didn't deserve an answer. A few days later, I received a message from Jessica. Jessica, Brian, I know I messed up, but I never wanted things to go this far. Please, can we talk? I'm sorry for everything. I ignored her too. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry they'd been caught. The final straw came when I received a call from my lawyer. Good news, he said. We've secured a settlement that ensures Jennifer gets nothing. She signed the paperwork this morning. Not even alimony? I asked. Not a dime, he confirmed. With the evidence you provided, she didn't have a leg to stand on. When the divorce was finalized, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Jennifer and Jessica had spent months trying to ruin me, but I'd turned the tables. They were broke, disgraced, and left with no one to blame but themselves. With the divorce finalized and Jennifer out of my life for good, you'd think I'd feel satisfied. And while the victory was sweet, I wasn't done yet. They had tried to destroy me, Jennifer with her lies, and Jessica as her willing accomplice. I wanted to make sure they had no chance of bouncing back. I started by focusing on Jennifer's professional life. She'd been working part-time with a local nonprofit, one of the few remaining links to her once-perfect public image. I sent them an anonymous email with a summary of the evidence I collected, including screenshots of the emails and texts where she mocked me and plotted to steal my inheritance. The response was swift. Jennifer was terminated within days. When she tried to appeal, the board doubled down, citing her behavior as grossly unethical and incompatible with the values of the organization. Next, I turned my attention to Jessica. She'd already been evicted and jobless, but I knew she was trying to rebuild her life by freelancing as a consultant. I reached out to a few of her potential clients under a pseudonym, sending them copies of the Facebook post and screenshots of her involvement in the scam. The feedback was exactly what I wanted to hear. Client 1, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We won't be moving forward with her. Client 2, shocking and appalling. We'll be cutting ties immediately. By the end of the week, Jessica's small pool of clients had dried up. Their personal lives weren't faring much better. Jennifer and Jessica's parents, who had initially tried to mediate, eventually washed their hands of the situation. A mutual friend told me they were embarrassed by the twins' behavior and didn't want the drama reflecting on their family. Apparently, their dad told them, "You made this mess, you clean it up," the friend said. They're not getting any help from their parents anymore. Good. The final step in my plan was the trust fund. While Jennifer could no longer access it, I wanted to ensure there was no way for her or Jessica to manipulate someone else into doing it for them in the future. With my lawyer's help, I added a clause to the fund's terms explicitly barring either of them, or any associates of theirs, from benefiting in any way. It was ironclad. Even if they tried to pull another con years down the line, the fund would be untouchable. Jennifer tried to confront me one last time. She showed up at my office unannounced, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted her out. "You've ruined me," she screamed as she was dragged toward the exit. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" I didn't even look at her. Jessica, meanwhile, sent me one final email begging for forgiveness. Jessica, Brian, I know there's no excuse for what I did, but I'm begging you to let this go. I've lost everything, my job, my home, my reputation. Please, I just want to move on with my life. I didn't respond. They didn't deserve closure. By the end of it all, Jennifer and Jessica were completely dismantled. They'd gone from scheming to steal my inheritance to being outcasts with no money, no friends, and no future. As the dust began to settle, I found myself thinking about everything that had happened. Jennifer and Jessica were gone, their lives in ruins, and my inheritance, the thing they had been so desperate to steal, was safe. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated even, and I did, to a degree, but there was also a heaviness, a lingering bitterness I couldn't quite shake. The fallout from their actions was brutal and far-reaching. Jennifer had been evicted from her friend's house after causing too much drama. Last I heard, she was staying in a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, scraping by on what little savings she had left. She tried reaching out to some of her old friends, but most of them had cut her off after learning about the scam. Jessica wasn't faring any better. With no steady income and a tarnished reputation, she'd been forced to take a low-paying retail job just to survive. She was barely scraping by, and from what I heard, she and Jennifer weren't even on speaking terms anymore. Their little alliance had crumbled under the weight of their failure. But what struck me most was how quickly people turned against them. The twins had always been good at charming others, using their looks and wit to get what they wanted. But now that their true colors had been exposed, they had no one left to lean on. "Serves them right," one mutual acquaintance said when we bumped into each other at the store. "You don't mess with people like that and expect to come out unscathed." I nodded, but her words stayed with me. It wasn't just about their actions. It was about the kind of people they were. Selfish, deceitful, willing to destroy anyone who got in their way. For me, the aftermath was a mixed bag. On one hand, I felt a sense of closure. I'd stood up for myself, protected what mattered most, and ensured they couldn't hurt me or anyone else again. On the other hand, I couldn't help but wonder how I hadn't seen it coming. How had I missed the signs? How had I allowed myself to trust someone so deeply, only to be betrayed so completely? The experience forced me to take a hard look at myself. I realized I'd been too trusting, too willing to see the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. That wasn't a bad quality, necessarily, but it was one I needed to temper with caution moving forward. I also learned the importance of listening to my instincts. Those small, nagging doubts I'd ignored at the beginning of Jennifer's suspicious behavior. They'd been right all along. If I'd acted sooner, maybe things wouldn't have spiraled so far out of control. As for the future, I'm taking it one step at a time. I've thrown myself into my work and hobbies, focusing on rebuilding the parts of my life Jennifer tried to tear apart. I've started reconnecting with old friends, people I'd drifted away from during my marriage, and rediscovering the things that make me happy. Dating is the furthest thing from my mind right now. I need time to heal, to rebuild my trust in others, and to ensure I don't repeat the same mistakes. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's built on small, seemingly insignificant cracks that grow over time. The key is to notice those cracks before they shatter everything around you. To anyone reading this who's dealing with infidelity or manipulation, my advice is simple. Don't ignore your gut. Don't let anyone make you feel crazy for questioning their behavior. And most importantly, don't be afraid to walk away, no matter how painful it might be in the moment. Sometimes you have to burn it all down to rebuild something better.